Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new season of the Purposeful Life Show with your host, Adrian Starks. I'm excited to share some new updates of the show with you, starting with a new look, sound, and energy, as well as a variety of guests coming aboard with intriguing topics of conversation. I hope you enjoy the new level of energy that will be brought to the show. Thank you for all of your support since the very beginning in 2019. Wow, it's been 3 years already? Because of you, the Purposeful Life Show is now in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, and we aim to get it into the top 1%. Continue listening to the show and share it with others. You can also now listen to the show on my Facebook page at Adrian Starks, where you can comment in real time and communicate with me about your aha moments. Thank you again for all of your support, and let's make this one hell of a year and be purposeful about doing that. Wishing you all much love and success. Do you feel like you're just being blown around by the winds of circumstances and you have no control? Are you finding that things are a lot more complicated than what you thought they were to be? Maybe it's because you're resisting something. In this segment, I will be revealing to you a powerful lesson learned by a classical Aesop fable called The Oak Tree and the Reed. It is here where we will learn a valuable lesson of how to weather the storms.
Welcome to the Purposeful Life Show on the Connect Now podcast with your host, Adrian Starks. If you're looking for the ideas that could be your breakthrough for change in your business, career, or personal life, then this podcast is for you. Join Adrian as he speaks on topics of personal and professional development for the person behind the business, and interviews a variety of entrepreneurs, business owners, and thought leaders to reveal their ideas and solutions to success and its challenges. Subscribe to the show and leave us a review. It's time to connect, learn, and grow.
Welcome back to the Purposeful Life Show on the Connect Now podcast with your host, Adrian Starks. Today, we're going to keep it fun and simple. We're going to be learning a powerful lesson about how to weather the storms through a classical Aesop fable. For those of you who are listening, you may have grown up on the Aesop fables, and you may even be teaching these to your children now. I have found over the years there's so much content in this book, and many businesses are currently using them. One being the tortoise and the hare. Remember that phrase? Slow and steady wins the race? Sure you do. Before we get started today, I want to make sure that you go ahead and download this podcast onto your favorite podcast platform. Push that notification bell so that you're notified with upcoming episodes, which will be weekly, and to also give us a review. We'd like to know how we're doing. Now, let's get into this Aesop fable that I'm going to be teaching today. As you're listening, keep an open mind. Yes, you are an adult. Yes, this is a business podcast. And yes, this is a lesson that can help you in your business because this story was told by an adult to other adults. To get a better understanding of the powerful content of the Aesop fables, we need to first dive back into who Aesop actually was. It is assumed that Aesop lived between 620 to 560 BC. Little is known about his life, but Aristotle mentioned his acting as a public defender. He was also known as one of the 7 wise men. It was generally believed that he was a slave, freed by his master because of his wit and wisdom. And that makes sense to me. As Aesop became famous for his fables, which used animals as a code to tell the truth about political injustices, he incurred the wrath of rulers and was eventually executed. Now, no one's going to be executed because of listening to these fables, or even talking about them. Thank goodness we're in a different day and time now. But why did Aesop use animals to depict the political injustices of his time? Well, let's go back to the notion that he was possibly a Greek slave. Now, if you're a Greek slave, or any slave, and you're teaching something different to the people around you, which I would assume would be slaves too, that's a danger zone. So he had to find a way to camouflage his message. He did this by masking it in the appearance of animals. Now imagine a slave owner walking by and hearing Aesop talk to his group of people. Do you think the slave owner would assume that Aesop was talking about him if he was discussing foxes and rabbits and eagles and hares? Not at all. That was the brilliance behind Aesop. But when they caught on to what he was doing, that's when problems happened. But his impact has lasted centuries, even until this day with me reading an excerpt of his fable to you. I want to remind you once again that these fables are not for children only. These fables were originally meant for adults. So as an adult listening right now, I'm going to read to you a fable that will help you to weather the storms in the current challenges that you're having in 2021. From time to time, I will step aside to read an Aesop fable on this podcast to keep it simple, fun, but also to show you the importance of simplicity and how a story can truly impact your life and your business. This story that I'm sharing today is called The Oak and the Reed. An oak that had been uprooted by a storm was carried down a river to the banks where many reeds were growing. The oak was astonished to see that things so slight and frail had withstood the storm when so great and strong a tree as he himself had been uprooted. "It's really not amazing," said a reed. "You were destroyed by fighting against the storm, while we survived by yielding and bending to the slightest breath that was blown." This story has touched me for many years, and I continue to read it monthly to remind myself that there are some things that are not worth fighting. There are some storms that we have, challenges, problems, setbacks, that if we continue to resist that experience, we'll find ourselves being thrown backwards into failure. Currently, right now, in your businesses, what storms are you fighting? What storms do you need to yield to turn and bend with? A lot of the storms that we have come from our own personal egos, our unwillingness to listen to feedback, our unwillingness to adapt to the markets that are changing because we think that we know it all. As a leader, it is our responsibility in business to be the ones who do not know it all, but we're eager to learn. That is bending with the winds of time. Do you see how these fables can teach lessons to us in a certain way? For you, this story may mean something totally different, and that is what we want. It's all about interpretation. Stories have a way to open our eyes because our brains are designed to function in images. And stories provide pictures, they provide sensory, they provide ideas. And it's that kind of story that makes me think how many times I have been blown backwards into the river of doubt, of fear, pity, negativity, to find myself just going down the river with no control, not choosing to swim, not choosing to get out of that river. Today, I would like for you to go back and listen to that story and to find parts in the story that may remind you of something that's going on right now. That reed told the oak tree that it was fighting against the storm when simply they were bending and yielding with it. That's called flexibility. That's called adaptability. And if you want to use that word that's always being used right now, I'll go ahead and say it, pivot. Whatever word you decide to use, let the story be a way for you to ask yourself this question. Am I fighting against this change or challenge? Or am I trying to accept it, address it, and embrace it by yielding with it? That's how simple it can be. So here are some sensory examples that you should be aware of when you're fighting against a storm. One is headache. There's exhaustion, agitation. There's lack of patience, lack of creativity, a lack of decision-making, procrastination, anger, and the list goes on. What all of these emotions have in common is that they're negative. They don't produce and they don't allow you to grow forward into action and to move with that storm. When you find yourself feeling any of these emotions, you have to sit yourself down and have a personal self-confrontation and ask yourself, what am I resisting? And what do I need to open up to more? This is critical for your business because you're going to always be challenged with uncertainty and things shifting just like the winds. And when they do, make sure you don't find yourself like that oak tree fighting against your biasness, fighting against your unwillingness to stretch yourself, fighting against the unwillingness to get feedback. Because if you do that, you will find yourself being blown backwards. So weather the storms of your business and your life this year by finding ways to adapt, to be flexible, to be open, to move with the challenges of the wind.
Thank you for listening to the Purposeful Life Show on the Connect Now podcast with your host, Adrian Starks. Subscribe to the show and connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Learn more about us by visiting our website at cnbn.ca. Go to connectnowpodcast.com to be inspired by more life-changing content. Let's connect, learn, and grow.